My name is Jacqueline Thompson, and I'm the Teen Programming and Outreach Librarian at the library. We also have Glenn Fisher on, who will be doing some of the technical sides of tonight. Our event tonight is through My College Planning Team, which is a nonprofit college planning organization that assists families nationwide through free workshops, free consultations, and affordable service plans. The mission of My College Planning Team is to leave no stone unturned to minimize your cost and maximize your value at the right college. Amanda Gold is not just a presenter for MCPT, she's also a student support specialist. Amanda has been a school counselor in Michigan for 12 years and has had the opportunity to work closely with a diverse student population throughout the entire post-secondary process. College access is important to Amanda, and throughout her years in counseling, she has written numerous newsletters for students and families, developed and implemented a college camp or college boot camp program for incoming seniors, and helped plan and implement Camp College with the Michigan Association for College Admission Counseling in 2019. Thank you, Amanda, for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
We also have Julian Treves. He is the executive director of My College Planning Team. Besides general management of My College Planning Team, he supports the business team and works with families all across the United States. He is also a founder of College Tuition Advisory Services, a data analytics business which provides transparent college pricing to help people get past the acronyms and confusion of the financial aid system. So welcome, Julian and Amanda. Thank you so much for joining us. We're really excited for this program.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. We really appreciate it. Well, thank you everyone for joining My College Planning Team tonight as we discuss how to reduce the cost of college. That's the goal, right? Everyone thinks that college is a great idea, but we have to figure out a way to pay for it. So before I get started, again, a big shout out to Jacqueline Thompson at DeWitt Public Library for hosting this event tonight. So thank you again for joining us. My name, as she said, is Amanda Gold. I'm a counselor in Michigan, so it's wonderful to join you all tonight. Our goal tonight is to give you some really great information on what you can do to make college as affordable as possible, both through financial as well as academic strategies, and talk about some ways to improve your college search and applications. What we're really going to emphasize tonight is you can't have one without the other. What do I mean by that? Well, we can give you the absolute best financial advice and financial plan, but if you don't have the right fit college and you don't pick the right school, it'll end up costing you more money in the long run. We don't want that. So we're here tonight to help provide you with both the financial and academic strategies that will make your college journey both successful and affordable. So let's start with My College Planning Team, who we are and what we do. We're a team of over 50 academic and financial professionals who work together to help families prepare and pay for college. All of our team members have many years of providing college planning support and advice. Some have expertise in admissions, others are experienced college counselors at some of our local private and public high schools across the country, such as myself, and others are specialists in financial aid or college finances. Many of our team members have won awards for their exemplary work with students, and several are even published in different magazines and have been quoted in media outlets such as US News, the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Inside Higher Ed, and Collegiate Parent Magazine. My College Planning Team's mission is to leave no stone unturned to minimize your college costs and maximize your college value at the right college for your student. To achieve this mission, we provide academic and application support to families. Everything from general application support, helping prepare a list of colleges of where to apply, SAT and ACT test prep, support with those college applications and essays, advice on building your outside interests and extracurriculars, not only for future professional plans, but also financial advice to allow you to spend the amount you want on college. We do that through cost estimating, optimizing your need-based financial aid, and even appealing any financial aid award packages that you receive. Now, we're going to explain more about all how that works as we get into the workshop tonight. So here's tonight's agenda. In just a few moments, I will introduce our keynote speaker, who is a financial aid expert. He's going to discuss how best to understand college prices and financial aid. Then we're going to provide some guidance on your college search, selection, and admissions process to help make sure you choose the best college possible for a successful college career. And then near the end of the presentation tonight, I will add a link in the chat box for you to schedule a free conference with my college planning team. Since we can't discuss your personal finances or academic matters in a public forum, we're always glad to answer your individual questions in a private meeting at a later time. So before we start talking about finances, let's first dive into a timeline for planning for college. So my college planning team supports families at all stages of college planning, and we encourage families to start early. Before I get too deep into it, if any questions come up throughout the evening, please feel free to use the chat feature, the Q&A feature of Zoom. That will help us to keep things separate, and we'll post links throughout the evening. So that'll keep that chat box open to not lose track of things. And then we'll have an opportunity for a live Q&A session at the end if you want to ask any questions live. So in the next section of tonight's workshop, we're going to talk about our recommended schedule of actions that you should take. Working steadily and taking these actions really improves the outcome in terms of application success, cost and funding, and will hopefully lower the stress of the whole journey. Starting early lets your family consider important college choices such as college major, cost and financing, location, and it gives you more time to really think about it, put more thought in, less stress, and ultimately better results. So for the benefit of our junior and senior families that we have with us tonight, I want to emphasize that there are actions that you can implement now to help you succeed. So no fear, it's never too late, but it's also best to start early whenever possible. So the chart above shows an ideal high-level view of what a college search should look like year by year. Now, while there's certainly more steps in the college planning process than those listed here, it gives you a basic outline of the most important pieces. So let's walk through the actions that you should take each year in high school. Ninth grade is about laying the groundwork for college. Get to know your high school counselor. And as a high school counselor myself, I can't stress this enough. They typically serve a large number of students, but it's, becoming more and more important to have that one-on-one interaction. You really want to be more than just a name. Having that relationship with your counselor will really help you in the long run. Make sure to tell them about your college plans, things that you're interested in, ask them for advice, whether you're taking the right classes, that you're on track for what your goals are and what you ultimately want to do. And then second on our list is engaging in out of school activities. Now, I have a ninth grader myself, seventh grader as well. And so getting involved in high school is one of the biggest things that we talk about at the start of the year. Now, yes, it does help with those college applications, especially to those more selective programs. But really, we want students to join groups and activities for themselves. It's about finding out what your interests are and doing some exploration, meeting new people, and making those connections with other people in your building. It's a great way to make friends and just learn about some other things that you might be interested in. Now, also in ninth grade, Michigan public school students will take the PSAT 8-9, which is this week. My daughter is taking the PSAT 9 tomorrow in April, and that's just required as part of the Michigan school day testing. It's the same test that students took in April of 8th grade, and many other states do sponsor the standardized tests as well, practice and SAT. It's a great opportunity to get a baseline score, especially if your student missed it in 8th grade. But it's a great way to kind of compare them side by side and just see how much they've grown over the last year. And then finally, money. Don't avoid the topic. That's one of the biggest things that we can tell you. There are a wide variety of choices for whatever your income and financial resources are. How much do you want to spend on college? Where is the actual cash going to come from? And are you using the right sorts of saving vehicles for this funding? So 10th grade is going to build on the groundwork, ideally, that you laid in 9th grade. Keep thinking about your future, about careers, and about outside interests, looking at scheduling and planning, making sure that you're on track to take all the classes that you're hoping to take in high school. Take a look at your GPA. And if you have any potential colleges on your list already, review their requirements. Go on their admissions webpage and take a look at their middle 50% of their freshman class. They're typically going to show you their average GPA and their average SAT or ACT scores. So, taking a look at your PSAT from the year before, are you in the ballpark? How did your PSAT align? How is your GPA aligning? And do you need to make some changes? That's a great time to add in those additional conversations with your school counselor. And then again, you're going to take that PSAT 10 during the school day. And, these assessments really do give you valuable experience. It gives you information about yourself and helps you prepare for the round of full SATs and ACTs should you take those junior or senior year. And then finally, the savings plan for college really should be in process. Now, junior year is most important academically from college application standpoint. Many schools in Michigan offer the PSAT and MSQT in the fall of junior year. That is the National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test, if you're not aware. In Michigan, you'll take the actual SAT in April during school, but many students take the SAT or ACT outside of school on a Saturday on their own. So, besides studying and continuing your extracurriculars, start assembling a list of colleges. There are over 3,000 colleges of various kinds across the US. That's a lot. We recommend consulting with a professional to help you with that process and really understand what those options are. It'll help make sure that the set of schools you're looking at represent a range of options and that you're not boxed into a limited and unsatisfactory set of choices, especially after those acceptances start to arrive. And then, of course, be sure to include financial aspects into that college list. Not being able to afford the college that they can attend is one of the leading causes of students dropping out of programs. And that's not something that we want for your student. And then finally, college essays. They don't need to be finalized during the summer, but we do recommend at least close to final drafts be written by the beginning of senior year. Generally speaking, Common App essay prompts and topics are relatively static year by year. So you can generally draft those essays with confidence and, being able to produce something. They've already announced that for the 23-24 application year, they're continuing the essays that are posted. So they can't start their Common App yet, but they can at least take a look at those essay prompts. Certain colleges do have specific individual essays that are required. Can often be pretty important for admissions and financial aid when those come into play. So, taking a look at requirements of specific universities and colleges that students are interested in to see what additional requirements there may be. You want to start thinking about and writing the essays a few months before the applications are due. Again, slow and methodical beats rushed and last minute. And then senior year, senior year is filled up with so much activity. You can see that from the list on the slide. And, just adding in a little bit more, you think about where students are in September, the there's so many early action deadlines and early decision deadlines, some starting as early as October 15th. In Michigan, if you haven't heard or aren't aware, October is Michigan College Application Month. So it's a great time for students to, send in more free applications, which, always saving money is great. There are a lot of things going on, especially in the fall. Those other early action deadlines typically come November 1st. And, you can really apply pretty much any time the academic year has begun. Some universities even open their application deadline in the summer, some in June, some wait till August 1st. So just keeping an eye out to see when you can get started. That way things aren't super rushed right in the fall. Now, while the FAFSA traditionally has become available October 1st, the upcoming 24-25 cycle will have a later undetermined availability date due to all the changes that they're making with the FAFSA rules and process. So it's not going to affect the College Board's CSS profile, which is for private, independent aid, scholarships, things like that. However, still figuring out when that FAFSA deadline will be. So one possibility is December, and we'll see how that all rolls out. But admissions letters, we find that those typically start arriving in December and really go into the spring. This time of year, January to March, is pretty big, especially for colleges in this area. And I mean, sometimes even going into summer. One detail that we really want you to think about ahead of time is your attitude towards being waitlisted at a school that you're very, very interested in. Colleges are waitlisting larger and larger numbers of applications these days. It's really in response to enrollment uncertainties. With COVID and the pandemic, there's been an increase in applications, and they've had a hard time really kind of figuring out what number of students are actually going to commit. And so some colleges and universities have over enrolled some years, which means the following year they have to make up for that. And so the number of applications isn't going to decrease, but the number of students they're admitting typically decreases. So trying to figure out that balance, and we're seeing just tons of students being waitlisted. University of Michigan waitlisting, 4.3 GPA students. So really thinking about what your priorities are, because that's going to fluctuate year by year. When you're looking at the wait list, it's also going to fluctuate on how many students they're able to take off from year to year. One year they may not admit anybody off the wait list, and the next year they might admit, half of the wait list. So really think about, what if you are waitlisted at one of your top colleges, and whether that's happening right now or something that could happen in the future. How are you going to handle that emotionally? That's hard. One option is to refuse the offer and deposit at another college and just get on with everything, be happy with your decision, and get started with your college career. Or you could accept the waitlist offer and potentially live in a state of suspense without really knowing where you're going to be next fall. And so making sure that you're okay waiting with that decision. Be sure that you're comfortable with it. So, give this question some thought ahead of time, and also maybe think about, is there a deadline of when you will know? Are you guaranteed freshman housing? And when will financial aid award letters come out for students who have been removed from the wait list? Those are things that could potentially affect your decision as well. And then after the financial aid award letters do arrive, be aware of the ability to appeal the aid decision and ask for more aid. Appeals are a good tool, one that you should definitely consider and think about, but really only in the right situation. That's something that my college planning team works with a number of families on appeals. We even present a workshop on appeals to help you get started with that process. And then finally, the traditional decision date for college bound seniors is May 1st. Be aware that certain colleges are accepting students well into the summer, and even isolated cases of students being admitted to a school after the academic year has actually begun. Some colleges will offer even a spring start date rather than fall right from the get-go. So is that busy enough for you? I know, 12th grade, it can seem crazy. The amount of things that are happening in 12th grade, I think really just it firmly underlines the case of starting early. You want to approach your college career methodically and without panic for all 4 years of high school, because a lot is going to be happening senior year. You want to make sure that you can enjoy it. So I hope that you can better understand why having an academic plan and having a financial plan are both important. You don't want to spend more money than you can afford. And naturally, you want what you spend and all the many efforts needed to graduate for college to be valuable to you. So our next section is going to focus on college pricing and financial aid. We'll then move on to some tactics that are more important as you apply and that can help you have a more successful college career while paying what you should be paying. So now, please welcome your amazing financial aid expert this evening, Julian Treves.
Thanks so much, Amanda. That was very interesting. It's always interesting to hear the viewpoint of an actual high school counselor on some of these matters. Hey, I have a question for you. So I'm a Pennsylvania resident, not a Michigan resident. The Michigan no application month of October, does that apply to all Michigan universities or just the public ones?
So it is typically just the public universities, and not all of them participate, but they will provide discount codes that students can use on their regular application or Common App. Some will only make it free on their specific school application, and some it'll be just a week in October, but they're really good about putting together a flyer for students and for counselors to share that. And actually, they just did a spring application event. It was just last week, I believe, just recently, where they had another round of discount codes for students who were still applying to college or maybe needing some backups where they had those free applications. So it was great.
Thanks a lot for answering that. Higher ed is just so complicated. I learn something new every day. So thanks for adding to my stack of knowledge with that factlet.
Sure.
So Amanda mentioned the financial plan, and we're going to be talking about college costs. I'll be covering the college cost landscape as well as the details of financial aid. And so one thing I wanted to stress right from the beginning is that going to college, as you probably know, is not like going from junior high to high school. You're entering an enrollment marketplace, and it's one with a lot of pressure and stress attached to it. On the part of the college, the administrations and commercial people in the enrollment offices are under a lot of pressure to hit their enrollment targets and also hit their financial targets and generate as much revenue as possible from the students who come to study there. It can't be understated how the majority of US higher ed is under tremendous commercial pressure these days. It's a tough job and a tough situation. So they really want to maximize their revenue. On the other hand, we have the consumers, students and their families, who are finding college prices very high, have struggles paying them, and are pulling out all stops to pay as little as possible. So it's a pressurized environment. And by the way, I'm not implying that colleges are bad at all. They have budgets to hit, payrolls to meet, and a lot of costs associated with higher ed, but they genuinely want students to come to their campus, successfully graduate in 4 years, enjoy their time on campus, and then go on to become loyal parts of the alumni network. So I'm not implying that colleges are bad, but the commercial realities are pretty firm. They're operating under a lot of constraints. Now, when we turn to the consumers, and thank you, Amanda, for flipping to the next slide, consumers have been affected by very high college inflation over a number of years. And this chart is scary. You can see the picture of the woman who's aghast. And the sticker prices really have gone up tremendously. In 1970, a typical tuition for a highly selective college was $2,500. At normal inflation rates, that would be about $15,000 today. Yet, typically, these highly selective schools charge $45,000 in tuition. That's just the tuition and fees. So you can see how higher ed inflation has fast outpaced normal inflation, and it's caused a lot of stress, financial headaches for families and students. However, this chart refers to the sticker price, technically the cost of attendance. And what's developed and what's really changed from the college going days of many of our attendees, the parents who are here tonight, is that the use of discounts has exploded. And on the next slide, we see how this trend has evolved. So 30 years ago, only 5 out of 10 students received some sort of discount, with a full half simply paying the sticker price. And the average discount was pretty small. It was 25%. So that means that you could go find out a college's cost of attendance, and you know that most of the students paid that cost of attendance, the sticker price, or something quite close to it. So things were relatively simple. Today, that reality has completely been upended. Today, 90% of students don't pay the sticker price. They receive various types of discount, and the average discount they receive has really surged all the way to over 50% to 55%. Adding to this complexity, and the next slide illustrates this, is the fact that individual students in the same class are paying radically different amounts of money. Let's take as an example Duke University in North Carolina. There you're going to have some students, a minority, who are paying very little for a year of college, generally under $5,000. Or you'll have a larger portion, typically over half of the class in universities like Duke, who are paying the full sticker price, which is $85,000. It's actually a little bit higher this year. So adding to the complexity, parents don't know the exact cost that colleges charge. And at the same time, there are a wide variety and diversity of financial aid awards going out to each class within a single college. So it's a difficult situation to sort out. I'll say that the more knowledge you have about the situation, the less you'll spend, the less stress you'll have, and generally the more success you'll have in guiding your student's college career. So how is price set in higher ed? There are 3 main drivers, and we outline them in this slide. The first one is the college's interpretation of your financial need. This is generally determined by the expected family contribution, and we'll be delving into that topic in more detail in a few minutes. The second one is aid given out for academic merit, typically grouped in merit aid, and that is things like scholarships for particular types of study, scholarships assigned to students who have attained a certain GPA or who have just demonstrated excellence in high school. And then there's a third very important factor, which is supply and demand, how badly the college wants your student. And that aid, by the way, is also lumped into merit aid along with the factors driven by the student's academic merit. So merit aid is a kind of compendium of 2 different drivers, the academic excellence of the student, as well as the supply and demand factors in the difficult and stressful college enrollment marketplace. So we've talked about the things from the perspective of the college, right? What about your perspective as parents, as consumers of college services? How are you going to pay for college? So this I think underlines the complexity of what's going on. Let's go into the different options. You could use your current income to pay for college. Unfortunately, most people don't have enough discretionary income out of their wages to simply pay for college just like that. What about dipping into your retirement savings? This is something that my college planning team really recommends against doing, and it's for two reasons. First of all, it depletes your retirement savings and delays the day you can retire. But at the same time, it creates a double hit because those pulling out retirement savings counts as income in financial aid filings. And if you have more income, you receive less financial aid. So it's a double whammy. You deplete your retirement savings and you receive less financial aid. So we recommend against it. What about using your college savings accounts, things like 529s? These are great vehicles. They're very useful and they have a number of benefits. The issue is that very few families we work with have anywhere near enough money in the 529s to actually fund significant parts of the college education. So it's a good tool, but it's insufficient. What about borrowing as much as it takes? Well, the way we phrase that certainly puts our view out there of what we think of that. We generally think that student debt needs to be treated carefully, just like any sort of borrowing. There are two main programs sponsored by the federal government. The first one is the direct student loans. You can borrow up to about $31,000 in that program for the undergraduate studies. And that's generally an okay program. It's not the program that's causing a lot of the student debt nightmares that have hit the headlines in the last few years. So it's acceptable, it's cheap, and you're really capped at a reasonable amount. The other significant program is borrowed by the parents. That's the Parent Plus Loan Program. And there we advise a lot of caution. The rates are okay, but not significantly better than what's available in the private marketplace. And you really want to avoid going more than a few, 20 or 30,000 in debt in that program. So that's the debt picture. It's okay, but you want to use it in limited amounts. What about winning private scholarships? Again, they're great. We encourage you to apply to these private scholarships, which often are very, very useful and often very underapplied to, by the way. The problem is that private scholarships are relatively small. They grant $1,000 to maybe $5,000 and don't come anywhere close to the cost of attendance at many colleges. So what we see is that basically families use a variety of these methods, mixed and matched. They use some of their income. They don't dip into their retirement savings, but they do use some of their savings and investment assets to pay. They do a little bit of borrowing, and they win private scholarships for a few thousand here or there. But the big source of financing up to the cost of attendance comes from the colleges themselves. Institutional aid is vast. We already alluded to this when we talked about the exploding discount, right? Discounts are provided by the colleges, it's institutional aid. The amount of institutional aid provided by colleges is vast. Just to take an example, in 2019, the amount of institutional aid granted by colleges was larger than both all of the direct student loans granted to students that year by the federal government, plus the Pell Grant program, which is the largest grant program run by the federal government to help lower income households attend college, right? So the colleges are giving more aid out than those two programs combined, and those are big programs. So that gives you an idea of the vast scope of the institutional aid and some of the opportunities that are out there for you to get more. Now, moving on to the next slide, we at my college planning team have a somewhat unusual approach to how you should look at colleges. We talked about looking at the different sources of cash to pay for college, your college funding sources. Inevitably, that's going to lead you to set a budget. You're going to have certain limitations. No one can afford everything, right? And so you're going to set a budget. And so we recommend setting that budget and then looking at colleges at or below that price range. There are going to be many that are good academic institutions that fit your price range. It is going to limit your choices a little bit, but not a lot, and there are going to be many options. So this approach that my college planning team sponsors and encourages is very different from what is typically done out there, and what many educational consultants advise. The way I would describe that general method that's out there is hoping and praying. You don't think about financial aid and costs much. You apply to a variety of schools, maybe 10 or 12, and then when you after you've been accepted, you hope and you pray that the financial aid awards are enough for you to afford the college of your choice. Now, this is crazy and not a good way of doing things, right? Do you approach spending and shopping in this way for any other service or good? Absolutely not. And the approach has also the negative drawback of being extremely stressful for parents. No one's blaming parents for taking this approach. They're really the victims in all of this, but it's really not optimal. So what we say is pick a price, set a budget, know your funding sources, and then shop for colleges based on that price decision. It's much more stress-free, and it's generally going to be much more successful, especially when your student arrives on campus and, hey, is a bit able to pay for college, which, as Amanda mentioned, is one of the leading causes of dropping out, that is not being able to afford it. Okay, so we have our individual approach, which moving on to the next slide is identify the colleges that fit your price range and stick to it. Now, actually finding that price is actually a technical difficulty. There are ways to do it for parents, but we generally recommend going to educational consultants and talking to them about this issue because some specialized knowledge is needed. My college planning team is very proud of the resources and knowledge we bring to help our families navigate this in a budget and financially conscious way. So cute picture of the kid. I like this one. He's has his index finger up and he's telling you to stick to the price range. Very good advice. Now we've talked a little bit about the college's attitude towards pricing, and then parents and families and how they approach budgeting, funding, and picking colleges. Now colleges have their own way of looking at pricing, and it's through the lens of financial aid. So let's talk a little bit about the mechanics here and what financial aid is. The first important thing to know about financial aid is that the FAFSA, the document Amanda mentioned earlier is with the delayed rollout, is key to all of this, right? Practically all aid requires you to fill out the FAFSA. We have isolated exceptions to this here or there, but we always recommend filling out the FAFSA, and we recommend doing it pretty early. That doesn't mean you have to go on the opening date when the system is crashing and fill it out, but a few weeks later is good. With the October 1st start date, we generally advise students and parents to fill out the FAFSA in October and November, so say within 8 weeks of the opening of the new FAFSA system. It's important to know that the FAFSA is updated yearly, and so your financial situation and how it changes flows through the need calculations over time. Now, what exactly does the FAFSA produce? Hey, it produces something called the EFC, the expected family contribution. Now, the expected family contribution is widely used in the college space, but it's really being misused because it's a very old government formula that is used to calculate the amount of federal aid that students are to receive. Somehow it's been adopted in the industry to govern all sorts of institutional need-based aid grants. So it's been misapplied. The other comment I'll make, by the way, is that the FAFSA formula, which focuses on income and assets, is outdated in a fundamental way. It seems to emanate from an America of 50 years ago and not today's workplace, which has a lot of gig jobs, a lot of fluctuations in income, and also two income households. So it's not a good fit for today's America, but it continues to be used. The other thing I'll comment on, by the way, is that, of course, higher ed loves acronyms. If we could just scroll down, Amanda, to the second bullet point. The EFC is about to be renamed the Student Aid Index, the SAI, in 2024 and 2025. So finally, I outlined its many flaws, pardon me, but it's the proxy that colleges use to calculate aid. And your objective as always, is to lower your EFC. We said at the beginning that you want to appear as poor as possible to the colleges, and one of the ways you do that is by, in a perfectly legal and commonly done ways to lower your EFC. Next slide says you have some control over your EFC more than you think, and we're going to outline some of the factors that feed into this. On the next slide, let's just talk generally about what feeds into the EFC and what the FAFSA measures financially. The fundamental drivers of the EFC are the types of assets you own, who owns the asset, and who earns the income. Well, unfortunately, there are two types of financial aid filings and two different kinds of methodologies out there. I know this is pretty complicated, unfortunately so, because everything in higher ed must be complex. The federal methodology is the aid calculation produced by the FAFSA. A smaller set of selective colleges use the institutional methodology, which is both the FAFSA and the CSS profile combined. The CSS profile is not sponsored and managed by the federal government. It's sponsored and managed by the College Board, the same organization that, for instance, runs the Advanced Placement Program, the AP classes and tests. The CSS profile is used by a higher, let's say, a high profile set of very selective institutions: Harvard, Stanford, Yale, Duke, like I mentioned earlier, and a few public universities. The University of Michigan, as it happens, is one of the schools that requires the CSS profile. These two financial aid filings have different methods, and different families are best served by one methodology rather than the other. Let's talk a little bit about what some of the differences are, and I'm not going to run down this list in detail. It would just take too long. The key thing here is that when you fill out the FAFSA, the third bullet point says it does not assess home equity. So that means that your home equity does not impact how much financial aid you receive at federal methodology schools. And most schools are federal methodology. Many of the public institutions in Michigan and many of the private ones all use the federal methodology. Moving on to the next slide, the institutional methodology does assess home equity. It's generally more complicated and more intrusive and in-depth than the FAFSA, with a lot more questions. One thing to know, though, is that the FAFSA is filed annually. However, the CSS profile at most institutions is filed once when the student enters the college. So let's say you apply to and are admitted to Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh. They're going to take a look at that CSS profile exactly once when they make the admissions decision and award you financial aid, and then it's going to be forgotten about. That said, the FAFSA is still plays a role in these selective institution financial aid decisions, and that needs to be filed on an annual basis. There's some strategies to lower your EFC across the board. One of them is to keep the student's income under the current protection allowance, which is around $8,000 currently. And it's possible to, if you're self-employed, to postpone certain types of compensation and make charitable contributions to lower your EFC. On the next slide, and I'm not going to talk about this in detail, the key thing here is that for the EFC, there are things called assessable assets, which are counted. And then there are things that are not accessible, which are in different categories. Some of the assets that are assessed include all of your savings and checkings accounts, 529s, vacation homes, rental properties you may own. But what's not here, by the way, and we can go on to non-assessable assets here, are all sorts of retirement accounts. Your balance in your 401k, IRAs do not count. Personal assets like cars you own do not count. And again, home equity does not count. One of the confusing things about the current college landscape is something called the FAFSA Simplification Act of 2021. Amanda had alluded earlier about how the FAFSA next fall was probably going to be delayed because apparently implementing this simplification is like the most difficult thing since the Manhattan Project. The Department of Education was supposed to roll it out this last fall, postponed it till this fall, and now is making noises about postponing it even further. Let's talk about what this means for you as a parent. First of all, a simple nomenclature change. The EFC is going to be replaced by the SAI. And an important thing to know is that if your grandparents make contributions to the college education of your students, it is not assessed in any way in the financial aid calculation. That's something we're talking to our clients about quite frequently. It also has a larger grant to the Pell Grant program to increase the aid limits for that program. There are some negative changes also. The big one is the second bullet point here, which is the discount for multiple children in college. Now, in the old federal methodology, if you had 2 kids in college, just to take an example, and your family produced your expected family contribution, that EFC would be cut in half and applied to each child. So if you had an EFC of 20,000, each of the children would be assumed to have a 10,000 EFC as they pursued their 2 different college educations. That's gone away. And there's a lot of debate about how that's going to impact aid and whether it will impact aid, but it's certainly not a good thing, and it's increased the level of uncertainty. It's also, by the way, the other change applies to the small business exclusion. In the old process, business owners were not assessed for any value of their business. However, in the new one, it is, but there are all sorts of methodology and process issues that the Department of Education appears not to have considered. So we'll see how that evolves. So in general, we're in a state of flux, and there is some confusion about this process. Okay, so before turning the floor over back to Amanda, I'm going to talk about the 6 biggest mistakes that we see families making in paying for college. Some of these are fundamental and others are a little bit more technical. The first one is keeping savings in the child's name. So savings in the student's name are typically assessed at a 20 to 25% rate. That means that, for instance, if a child has $10,000 in a savings account, colleges will expect $2,500 from that to go to their college education. However, if the parents hold that $10,000, only about 5% of it will be assessed. So a much smaller number. So don't keep savings in your child's name unless it's absolutely necessary. The second one is a biggie, and I already talked about that, using retirement funds to pay for college. It's bad for your retirement savings, and it's also bad for your financial aid eligibility. The third one is maybe the most important, focusing on colleges outside of your price range. Generally stick with your price and don't let college spending outrun your budget, and certainly don't lead it to major debt problems after graduation. We see this frequently. It's a real problem. And the one advice and the one thing I hope you take away from tonight is to focus on colleges that you can afford and in your budget, in your price range. Number 4 is not optimizing family finances to minimize the expected family contribution. Things like keeping the savings and assets in parents' name instead of students, and things like that. Finally, we recommend using the appeals process to obtain additional aid where it's possible. Now, not all universities will be open to appeals and negotiations, but some will. So it's important to know which ones are and to factor that into your college search. And finally, we're going to return to Amanda's message from the very beginning of this evening, which is start early if you can. Start thinking about college in your freshman year. It doesn't have to be intense, but just take a methodical, planned approach to your college search. It's going to improve results and make the whole thing much more pleasant for you. Well, thank you. And I'll turn things over to Amanda, who's going to talk about application strategies more generally.
Thank you so much, Julian. I think one of the biggest things as a parent of 2 children is the losing that discount on having 2 kids in college. It'll definitely be interesting to see how that all plays out, and hopefully doesn't take too long for that to come out.
Yeah. I'll just comment that we have an active debate within my college planning team on whether it's going to have an impact. Because as I said at the beginning, college is a marketplace, so its pricing is
True.
dependent on supply and demand.
Mhm.
Can colleges suddenly raise prices to a stressed out consumer just because of some federal rule change? It's unclear. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's interesting. It'll be fun to see.
It sure will. Thank you. So far tonight, we've talked about a timeline for college planning and the FAFSA and different strategies for paying for college. So let's switch gears a little bit, continue posting those questions in the Q&A as we go along. A lot more information still to come. Again, we really wish that we had time to answer all of the questions, but utilize that Q&A and let's talk about 7 academic and application strategies that will help you thrive in that college search and college career. So I know we've got some younger families, 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade in the audience tonight. Again, we really believe start the college planning process as early as you can. And I know that we've outlined some of this already. I hope you understand the why. But really going into it more, a student's academic plan and the courses that they take in high school, those really need to be coordinated, not just to meet your state's graduation requirements, but really to prepare them for college. Really connecting a student's outside interests and extracurriculars. We want that to blend into their academic focus and their major in college. Really evaluating the curriculum that your high school has to offer. What classes are you hoping to take by the time you graduate? Is there a certain math class level that you hope to achieve? Do you hope to take dual enrollment classes? And what do you need to do at each step of the way? So waiting until later on will obviously hinder that process. It takes time to develop naturally. And then on the financial side, as we said, few people can simply just pay for college out of their paycheck. So savings and that financial planning, it really needs to fit into that whole process. And again, we don't want to wait until the last minute. So if you can start early, it'll be less stressful in the long run. We don't want this to be a crash course. We want you to be thoughtful throughout that whole college planning process, your high school process, and everything. So given all of these factors and choices to consider, the fact that there are over 3,000 colleges in the US, how do you begin that search? And I know one of the questions was regarding the cost of college and how do you find colleges that fit into that ballpark? It has to begin with you, the student and the family. Students really need to think about themselves and what they want out of a college. Once you really start to understand yourself more and become clear on what it is that you want, you'll start to really understand how certain destination colleges will work for you. And then obviously some aren't going to be a good fit. So that's where we talk about fit factors. And that's probably something that you have heard, those, buzzwords, match and fit. It's really how a given college matches up with a student. So we've talked about the college finances and costs, but we really want to, extend that out and talk about all of those other factors. So looking at, we know cost is important. That's why Julian started with that part first. And, besides the financial piece, we really look at 5 other factors that we want you to focus on. The first is support. How a college assists students with academics is an important factor in what kind of education they'll be getting. Some schools offer little support and want to foster an environment of independence, while other schools might have options like free tutoring groups, writing assistance, and different programs. You really want to think about your students' learning style. Do they need to be in a smaller setting where they have more one-on-one interaction with their professor, a professor who will be in their office during office hours, not taught by a teacher's assistant. Or are they completely fine sitting in a big auditorium style with 500 students and just kind of hiding in the back? So really thinking about what your student will need out of those potential supports in college. And then thinking about environmental factors, the small school in the middle of a large city or a university that makes up most of a small town. Those of us in Michigan, if you think about Wayne State being in the center of Detroit, and that very urban campus is very different than Saginaw Valley, where it's just kind of in its own world. It's a beautiful campus and it's separate from everything. So thinking about what your student wants to do on the weekends and do when they're outside of class. Do they want the hustle and bustle of city around them? Do they want to have a grocery store nearby or a mall nearby? So really thinking about what they'll be able to do outside of just classes. Do they want to potentially, run into their classmates and attend a college where a lot of students are attending locally? So really thinking about those different environmental fits. Determine what is socially and culturally important to your student. Finding colleges that are going to meet their personal and social fit. We want students to be happy with college and to find the things that they're interested in, whether it's a Big Ten school and attending football games or basketball games, or just having concerts on campus, or Greek life, or wanting to just study and find a learning community that really focuses in on their major and understanding each other more. So really thinking about the different activities and facilities that a college offers, the different resources that they have, have an opportunity if they can visit, pop in on a class, a lecture, talk to some students who are there. If at all possible, and I know it's hard when students are in school, but try to visit during the week when students are in classes. When you go on a weekend, it's hard to really get that feel of what campus is like. So, try to observe what's going on. Our breaks are different than college breaks. So use those spring breaks and visit and extend that visit and drive around town and see what's out there. And then check out internship opportunities. Having an experience in a field that your student's interested in is very valuable. Take a look at their study abroad programs. Some colleges have study abroad programs that students can start as early as their second semester freshman year. So think about the hopes and the goals and the opportunities that your students want in that college experience. And then, of course, academics, certainly, not the least important. That is one of the most important things as well. So ensure that the college is not just strong in their major, but that they have a good graduation rate. That's one thing that, we talk about sometimes is their 4-year graduate, their rate, their 6-year graduation rate. So really looking into how that program keeps students and holds students and is going further. You want to make sure that they're getting what they want, the depth out of that program. So one of the ways that colleges provide those discounts, and Julian had talked about this a bit, is through merit aid. Now, it depends on, just more than academic achievements. Academic ability really is one of the most important components. Looking here, test scores is one of the things that can really help reduce those overall costs. And that's why we still poke around and talk about the test scores when many colleges are test optional. A good test score can help you qualify for more merit aid, and it can also help you for some of those more selective majors. When we're looking at the scores in terms of merit aid, some colleges will have a chart where, it's a matrix where they look at your GPA, they look at your SAT or ACT score, and really see where your student fits into that puzzle. CMU, Central Michigan is a great example. In our area, they have, it's very detailed. And the great thing about CMU is that if you submit an SAT score that would drop the merit aid, they don't hold that against your student. So really using that test optional policy to its fullest. And so that's where really investing in improving those test scores, it really can pay off in the long run with college scholarships, private scholarships, the merit aid from the universities. Those test scores aren't just used for admissions purposes, so they really can bring down that cost of college. And then, like I said about those direct admit programs, those more selective programs, it gives students more flexibility in their application, especially with the way that things are changing from year to year. Having that good score really helps add to their application. That, those test scores, and especially, I know this is a stressful week for many people, but really investing in improving those scores, and the ultimate goal is, yes, get up that score. The higher test scores, the good programs are going to cover so many different things. And I think one of the things that we see a lot in schools is test anxiety and just focusing in the test room. So there's those academic pieces of looking at the test as a whole, but then the other pieces of the test as well. It's not a miracle solution just having the test prep. It's not going to make your scores jump from an 1100 to 1400, but really just having that foundation, whether it's the free Khan Academy or more personalized tutoring services, really taking a look at what your student could benefit from. So demonstrated interest, we talk about this just briefly, really thinking about when you're filling out those applications, think about those top colleges that you're interested in and how can you build those connections with the university. They do have some tricky, sophisticated ways of tracking that. I've had admissions officers tell us that they have actually taken a student out of their potential admit pile because they blocked their emails and unfollowed them. So there are things that they're tracking, especially in today's world when things are getting more selective because of those application increases. So, whether it's looking at their social media posts and liking them, reaching out to the college admissions advisor that, comes to visit your school, find those ways to connect. Signing up and attending those online virtual visits if they have them, or chats, going to a campus visit, those are additional ways as well. So, not anything super secretive or some big strategy, just, be aware that those admissions offices are doing some tracking and paying attention. So, we tell our students all the time in our rising senior meetings and the fall senior meetings, behave with professionalism and just know that they're out there looking. Scholarships, start locally. This is a big time in high schools for those local scholarships to come out. Over the next month or two, students are really going to see those applications come out and additional applications from colleges and private scholarships. I'm constantly begging students to apply for scholarships. It is crazy. And I get it. When we get to this time of year, they're burnt out. They don't want to write any more essays. They don't want to do anymore. They don't want to check their school email and kind of out the door. So that's why we talk about early, start those essays early, really start thinking about what's out there. Juniors can start, researching what local scholarships they could potentially be able to apply for and qualify for as seniors. So now is a good time to start looking into that. So many good online resources to help you identify. Fastweb.com is a great scholarship search engine. My Student Aid for Michigan, lots of different programs out there. But for FastWeb, during junior year, have your students sign up at fastweb.com. They can download the app on their phone, and then they'll get notifications for the scholarships that they qualify for. We know they're glued to their phones anyway, right? They've always got it in front of them, no matter where they are in class. So that's another way to just kind of, poke it and get those opportunities out there. So as you're researching, just make sure that you're keeping an eye on what's out there and what's available. And then, the essay truly is more important now than ever. With so many colleges being test optional, more focus is going to go into those different aspects of the college application. So really looking at the essay to speak even more on the student, thinking about just showing their personality. Who are they as a whole? When they're done reading that essay, are they going to remember this student 40 essays later? When the admissions officer goes to the table to talk about your student and recommend them to the admissions committee, you want them to be able to really think about some of the things that your student wrote about and be able to recall them. And, oh my gosh, I think Johnny would really fit into our university because of XYZ. So making sure that students really take the time to write that outstanding essay. Don't wait until fall of senior year. Now's the time for students to really start doing some research on those essay prompts and getting some drafts going. Getting a few drafts before heading into senior year is really going to help alleviate some of that stress going in. So make sure, read it out loud, have, somebody read it, an English teacher, a school counselor, and, not just your parents, but making sure that students are really editing those essays. That's going to be key. You don't want those simple mistakes in there. And then earning college credits that your student could potentially transfer into college. So looking at dual enrollment courses, advanced placement courses, international baccalaureate programs for schools that offer them. And then something that we don't hear too much about in Michigan are the college level exam programs, CLEPs. And I know there is some talk about trying to get more sites to offer them. It's a great way to earn college credit in those subject areas. Some of those sites down at the bottom, outlier.org and modernstates.org, are some good resources to start to look into those CLEP programs and some benefits of doing them. They're through College Board, CSS profile, AP testing, SAT testing. They're just running the whole gamut. So just making sure that colleges accept the classes for credit is going to be key. So checking out their websites and finding out what that equivalency will be for those AP classes or CLEP or whatever it might be. So graduate in 4 years, I know we talked about this, right? So reducing the cost of college, graduate in 4 years, not 5 or 6. So some of the things that we talked about, 26% of first year students don't return their second year, 37% transfer, and then only 44% actually graduate in 4 years. Now, when you think about scholarships, a lot of scholarships will be for 4 years, renewable for 4 years. So that means years 5 and 6, if that's what it takes, are going to be more expensive. So really thinking about those things. And, sometimes they drop out of college for financial reasons or personal reasons. There's so many different ways. But one thing that we don't want to see is a student We never want to see it, right? But we don't want to see a student dropping out of college because they simply can't afford it anymore. And so that's why we really talk about the importance of understanding what you and your student can really afford when it comes to paying for college. So, you want to know how long it actually takes for a student the average for a student to graduate? 5.8 years. We won't talk about how long it took me to graduate, but why is it taking so long? So these are some of the things that we talked about: academics, personal choice. Sometimes they just can't handle the schoolwork, or they get to campus and they're completely unhappy, typically because they never visited and don't know what to expect. And then costs. So quickly, just kind of run through what admissions officers are looking at. Of course, GPA, test scores, those are going to be some of the primary factors. And then looking at the rigor of your curriculum. So when you're sending the transcript over, did you take advantage of the AP classes offered at your school? How many classes did your school offer? How many did your student take? Really comparing student to student within your school. Did you take the easy way to your GPA instead of challenging yourself and adding that rigor? And then, really looking at what else your student was involved in, and does it align with their intended major? Are they focusing on a lot of art classes and ceramics, but applying to engineering? Well, that doesn't really show a good picture that your student's truly interested in engineering. So looking at those type of factors. They want to make sure that your student's going to succeed and stick to that college and graduate. They really do take a holistic view of the application process and looking at your student as a whole, their character, who they are as a person. It's not just GPA and test scores. Those other things really do come into play. Looking at just that overall college search done well, understanding what fits you, research the student first and then the college, that research, and have those strong applications, and then ultimately choosing wisely, making sure that you're making an informed decision and comparing the financial aid and admissions letters and not just picking the first one that comes through. So I know a lot of information that we just went through tonight. I'm sure that you've got lots of more questions that we haven't even had a chance to answer, but many of the points that we talked about tonight are general truths. They apply to everybody and we can just kind of take them at what they are, but student in every family is different. Families have specific questions or certain financial situations that are very specific. And that's where we can really help you with those more specific questions in a free conference, either by phone or video. We will discuss all aspects of college related to applications and admissions, finances. We talk to parents of younger students as well in their first couple of years of high school, especially helping them navigate that whole process. So if you have an opportunity, sign up for that free conference. And again, you can change that, cancel it easily to find another time that fits and works for you. So our goal for tonight was to provide you with helpful, creative ways to reduce those college costs. I know lots and lots of information. We have a brief evaluation of tonight's program that we really want everyone to complete. It gives us the feedback that we need to ensure that we're helping families and giving information that really benefits you. So if you could please take a moment to fill out that survey. Promise it'll only take a minute or two, and we can open it up for a few minutes for any live questions that you may have. So we'll give you just a moment to go ahead, click on that survey that's in the chat box, answer those couple questions for us. It truly is helpful, and what we need to make sure that we're getting you what you need. While you're filling that out, Connect with us on social media. Tell your friends about us. Check out our website, gomcpt.org. Nice and easy to remember. There's more information about different events that we offer, different programs that we offer. You can even scan the QR code on your screen there. That'll sign you up for our free monthly college planning newsletters. They'll provide timely information, help make that college planning journey more effective and enjoyable, we hope. So check out that newsletter. And as you see in the chat there, thank you so much, Glenn. If you would like to talk live rather than type a question in the Q&A, just go ahead and raise your hand and we can let you speak live. If you just want to type it in, you can type it in. But so much, everyone, for joining Julian and I tonight. Great to get out to present to DeWitt. You're about an hour and 15 minutes for me. So it's nice to know that, you're not too far away and getting to talk to some locals.
Well, if there aren't any questions, maybe things will occur to you after you've logged off. Feel free to sign up. We can have a free half-hour video or phone conversation and go over with whatever's on your mind. We do that all the time with parents from across the country. So I enjoy it a lot, actually.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jacqueline and Glenn, for hosting us this evening. Hope you have a wonderful week.